welcome again to my channel. Today I want to keep my promise and do a video about how to use JetEngine with the Bricks Builder. So if you have seen my previous video, I've showed you how to use JetEngine with Gutenberg. So I'm going to build on that one. Of course, I have removed everything that is Gutenberg only. But what I mean by that is we will continue with the elements that we had in that video. If you haven't seen it, the link is going to be down below, so you can always go and see that. But I warn you, it's a pretty long video where I cover everything in details. So in order for you not to have to listen to that one, if you don't want to, I'm going to do a quick tour of what we will do or what we have done already so far. So I have installed, of course, JetFilter. I'm going to show you how to use that a little bit later on. JetFormBuilder as well. What is really important here is JetEngine. This is the one that will allow us to create custom post types, custom fields, and so on. So inside of that, I have my post types that are here and that are there as well as you can see them, artists, song, and albums. So for those of you who are new to that series, let's call it like that, we will create, of course, a CD album. So that's why we have those three custom post types. So let me open them first to show to you what we have in each of them. So for the artist, this one is pretty basic. We will simply use the default WordPress title editor, which is Gutenberg, of course, and the thumbnail or featured image if you prefer. No custom or meta fields. That's the name that JetEngine uses for custom field. They call that meta fields. Let's switch to the albums. The albums are simply, again, they're going to have the title, the editor as well, and the thumbnail. But in this particular case, we have added one meta field, which is the release date of the album. So inside of that, we have set the date field for this particular data. And finally, we have the songs custom post type, where we have very little, just the title for the WordPress default elements. But we have added two meta fields, which is the song order, and we have used that previously in the previous tutorial to reorder the songs to be the name, the order, sorry, of the album. And of course, we have also put the length, which is a regular text field, because the only choice that we had would be time. But time, of course, we would have AM and PM, which makes no sense. So I prefer to leave it just as regular text. So these are my three different post types. Also, what we did create one taxonomy, which is the genre taxonomy, which will allow us to say, for example, it's a jazz album, country album, rock album, or things like that. And in this particular case, no meta fields. The only thing is that we set that to be hierarchical so that we can have the little boxes, check boxes to check instead of having to type every time. So all of the details of that are inside the other video as well. We have also created the relations because now all elements are individual elements. So the way to put them together, to make them talk together, to make a relation between the album and the artist, things like that, is via the relations. So we have created two relations, one for the artist and the album together, and one for the albums and its songs. So we have set the relation of one to many just for the purpose of demonstration. That means that one artist can have many albums, but an album can only have one artist. Of course, we know that in real life there are some compilations, there are some soundtrack albums and things like that where we have more than one artist. But just for the sake of this example, we set that like that. And for the album songs, we set that many to many. And the reason is that one album can have many songs, and that's obvious. But a song can appear on multiple albums. If we have a greatest hits album, for example, or sometimes a soundtrack will have a song that is also on the artist album. So that's why we have a many to many. Like I said, in real life, both would be many to many. We also have a listing and a query builder, and I won't cover that for now. This is just for the last part of the video, which is pretty more advanced. It's not part of bricks either, so I kept a couple of those just for the more advanced section a little bit later on. Now, for bricks itself, I assume that if you want to work with bricks, you already know a little bit about bricks. So I already went ahead and customized a couple of things in bricks, really basic, especially, for example, the element action in the builder itself, and a couple of things like that, but not that many, honestly. I did, though, already create the header template with my logo and my menu navigation, but especially also created my theme style here. So if I go to my settings, theme style, and I have created the album style. Inside of that, I have applied that to all my website and already set the sections to have top and bottom margin of 5 REM, which is the unit, in other words, 5 characters. If you don't know about that, there are some CSS video that will cover a little bit more. And for the container, I've already put 1.5, in other words, 15 pixels on each side of each container, because I'm going to use that structure, a section with at least one container inside of it. All right, so that has already been done. If you don't know about some of these things, don't be afraid to ask questions below that video. I'll try to answer them. But I wanted to not start from scratch, but really focus on JetEngine with bricks. So let me close those, and let me close that as well. So let's start right away with creating the album archives. So for example, I shouldn't have closed that, but right now, when we go to albums, we have a list of all the albums, the archive. This is the default one for WordPress. And of course, it always only takes the default field, which is in this case, the title and the date that we created it. And right now, as you can see, it takes everything, including songs and so on. So everything is listed there. Same thing for artists. You see that both pages are the same. So there's no filter. It doesn't know what thing to take. So it's an archive of everything that we have on the website. So let's start, because it's a little bit more visual, with the artist template that will show a list of all the artists where we can click on them. So let's go on Bricks templates. And from there, I'm going to add a new one. And this is just for the first time, because all the others, we will create them directly from Bricks. But let's create another one here. I'm going to call that, let's say, albums archive. I'm going to set that on the right side to be an archive template and click publish. Then I'm going to click edit with bricks. I have bricks 1.5, by the way. 1.5.1 release candidate has been released, but not the final version yet as of today. So that's why I'm using 1.5. Okay, so let's start by adding a new layout element. So a section. Section will automatically include a container as well. So we have the spacing put into the general settings. Inside of that, I'm going to add my title. So I won't use the post title because it's going to say album archive. I just want to have albums, but you could use post title if you have named the archive accordingly. If I have named it albums, I would probably have keep it like that. But let me get rid of that. And I'm going to put a regular heading so I have a little bit more control over the text. And I'm going to say albums simply. Here it is. I'm going to set that as an H1, main title. And let's add a little bit of spacing, maybe above and below it. So let's say, let's go in pixels for now. So 1.5.1 again has some different views for that with no unit of measure. but still on 1.5 for now. All right, so now let's add the element, which is the listing of the albums themselves. So there are two ways to do that. We can use the query loop, but I won't do that for now because we have a very simple request right now. So why not simply use what is been included from the start, which is the post uh, widget. So let's bring that into my element here, my container. And I'm going to simply go there and we have a little query, which is about the same thing as the query loop. So let's click on that, choose as the post type my albums. And there we go. We already have some entry there. Because, by the way, I went on and entered a couple of albums. So we have, I think, 8 albums in total. We have 4 artists. So I'm going to order them, of course, by title and ascending. So from A to Z. Posts per page, we can set that, let's say, to, usually I would set that to probably something like 9 or 12 because we have 3 columns. But for now, I'm going to simply set that to 3 just to show you pagination as well. Layout, it asks us how we want to show it. So it can be a list, a grid, masonry, or metro. So by default, it's a grid, and that's okay for me. But I'm going to put 3 columns instead of 2. So here we go. Spacing, 30 pixel, will be both for the horizontal, or in other words, columns and rows. I'm going to right away change that for the mobile devices. Let's put that to 2 for the large mobile and regular tablet. And let's set that to 1 for cell phones or mobiles if you prefer. All right. Again, I could style that a lot more to be a lot more pretty, but it's not the goal of this tutorial here. Now let's go with the image. So we have the default image here, the post image. So I'm going to set that to have a link image. So that way we could click on the image to go directly to the album in this case. We could set the size if we wanted to and the aspect ratio as well. For example, if we want to have a 4:3 or a 16:9, or of course a square, which is the default. So I'm not going to set it. And I'm going to change the image size to 300 by 300. It will never go beyond that. Then we have the fields here. So if you have watched the previous video, what we had here was the image, we had the title, a little extract that we have here already, and then we had a read more, but a link. So let's do something similar. Already have the image that is linking to my post. We have the title here, post title, and you see maybe that we also have a link here. So let me try to zoom in here. Yeah, so hopefully it shows on the video. So we have the post title, then column and link. So that means that the title now is also a link to the the post itself. So in other words, this album. I'm going to change the tag since I have just an H1 here. I don't have any other title. So to follow the good practice, let's say it like that, I'm going to change that for an H2. Don't want to go into details about that. And that's okay for this element here. So then we have the excerpt, which is set to 20. So column 20, these are filters. You can find more documentation on the Bricks website about that. If I do exactly as my previous tutorial, I'm going to set that to 15 simply because we can. All right. So this is my extract. So a part of my text. And we can leave it like that since we already have the image and the title that points to the post itself. But let's, just for the sake of it, let's change that. Of course, I already have 2 links. That's a lot. So I'm going to remove it from my title. So here, I'm going to simply remove that column and link word. So now my title doesn't have a link anymore. And underneath it, I'm going to add a read more link. So I don't want to have the post title or something like that. And of course, I don't want to have just the link. It's going to be a static text because they will have all the same text. So let's say read more, and of course, I just want to have a regular paragraph, just regular text. Unfortunately, I cannot select A for an anchor, in other words, a link. So I'm a little bit limited here. But that's okay because this field here does take HTML. So if you know a little bit of HTML, you can always customize that. So let me show you what to put there if you don't know HTML. So we're going to put an opening or lower than sign, then the A for the link itself, and then I need to have the href attribute with an equal sign and quotes. And then inside of that, I need to put the link itself. Of course, I won't try to type the link. I do have my little dynamic data button here, so I can click on that and go get the post link. So now you see it's going to put a kind of a placeholder for my link. So kind of a square curly bracket and post URL. Then I'm going to close my quotes, close my opening tag with a greater than sign, and at the end of that, I'm going to put another lower than sign, a slash, my A tag to close it, and a greater than sign. So now I have added a custom link just like that right there. So that's a way to do that. Not the only way, of course, but that's one way to do it. For the rest, I could, of course, go there and change my colors and everything. I don't want to do that. I'm just going to add pagination if I ever need it, which is the case here. And that's all. I'm done. So let's just save that and now see my albums. Oops, there's one more step I need to do, of course. If I click on that right now, it does apply it because it's the only template so far, but I don't want to do that because, of course, we know that later on we will have some other templates. So if I got to come here, click on my settings, template settings, and I need to apply it to certain page. So in conditions, I need to click on add condition, then select that it's gonna be for an archive, and then we select which type of archive. So it's a post type archive, and finally the albums. So you need absolutely to do that. Usually I do that at first so that I'm sure that I don't forget it, just like I did. So let's save that, refresh my page here. And now you see my 3 albums. If I go with my navigation here, I can see 3 more. So my pagination is working well as well. So now I'm going to come back and change my post here grid, my post grid, to go back to, let's say, 12 column, not 12 column, sorry, still keep 3 columns. But in my query, I want to change that to 12 per page. So that way, of course, we have only 8, so we won't have any navigation anymore. Save that, and it was that quick to create my album archive. All right. And of course, now I can click on the image or any read more link to go directly to my album. And of course, now I only have the description. We will need to add a template for that a little bit later on. Now let's do the same thing for the artist archive. So let's go there on the right side, click on templates, the little folder icon, and add a new template from there. So click create template. Let's call this one artists archive. I could say just artist. That way I'm going to be able to use the post title. Let's put that to archive as well, but we cannot here say which type of archive. So just that it's going to be an archive template. Template bundle, by the way, is that you can create some bundles when you have multiple layout, multiple styles, and you can create a bundle for that and always use the same bundle if you want to have, for example, a dark and light bundle or things like that. I don't have any, so that's why it's empty. So I'm going to click on create template. So now I'm going to go inside this one to edit, click my pencil to edit that artist template. Let's add another layout again, just one section. This time I'm going to drag and drop my post title since I took the time to name it the right way. Still gonna do the same thing and put some spacing above and below. And I'm gonna do the exact same thing, add the post element here, post widget in my page. This time the query will be almost the same, but of course, artist instead of albums. So let's do the same thing, order them by title, ascending, and here we go. Of course, the Beatles is a B, but if I would want that to work the right way, I would have to put Beatles and then something like D in parentheses. Same thing for artists. If I want to have Twain before, I would have to put Twain, comma, Shania or something like that. So you understand that these are in alphabetical order based on the first character. So it's working as expected. Let's put again 12 per page, like we did previously for the other one. Again, image, I'm gonna link the image. I'm gonna leave it square and put 300 by 300. Field, I'm gonna leave it like that with the link, no read more, just to show the difference with the albums. And I'm gonna add as well the pagination. So I'm gonna click show and I'm gonna keep the default settings here. So by the way, I forgot one thing, which is the number of columns. So here I'm going to put 3 columns, just like the other. 30 pixel spacing is already there. I'm going to put 2 for tablet. That's a 2. Keep the same 2 here. And for smaller device, I'm going to put 1. Great. There's a spacing here, maybe because of that 30. So let's put that to 0. And as you can see now, here's the full width. Okay, so my album or artist archive is already done. Whoops, something here. Thought I started with that, but I think I didn't. So let's change the condition. Usually I start with that, but sometimes when we speak, we don't. So conditions, archive, it's gonna be a post type archive, and this time the artists. Okay, so let's say that. And if I click on artist, here we go. I have my artist archive. So if I click on one of them, again, this is what we need to do now. Come and change uh, this layout. I'm going to choose Shania Twain because that's the one who has the most album in my library, my current one. So I'm going to base myself on this one for the rest of the exercise. So now let's create our artist, single artist when we click on the one artist template. So let's click on the folder again. Click on the create template, the plus icon. Let's say I'm going to call that single artist. I know I'm going to have to change the title, but it's a little bit less confusing like that. It's going to be a single, so just one page. So single archive and create template. Let's click on edit, the little pencil icon. And now this one is going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to still use, of course, my layout here. I'm going to use the regular title because I know that I didn't give it the same name. So let's call that. Oh, this time that's true. I want something that is dynamic. I want to have the title of the artist or the name of the artist of the group right there. Of course, I could have chosen post title. So let's do that. And you will see that right away, it doesn't work. It does work. It is the name of the page. What I need to do now is change my condition before I forget it. So let's click on setting, template settings, condition, add that to the post type right there and select artist. And now one thing that I didn't show you before, it's going to be useful for a single like that. we can pre-populate the content just for us to see the output, how it will look like. And I know it has changed a little bit in 151, but let's do it like that in 1.5. So let's click on content type. Let's select that we want to have a single post or page. We want to have a specific one. So let's say Shania Twain. So Shania Twain. Click apply and preview. It's going to save this and reload the page. And now you can see the title is the right title right there. Another way to do that, of course, I could have added a regular title, a regular heading if you prefer, and simply say, click right there on that little icon and say that we want to have the post title. It would have done the same thing. I don't see the output in 151. Yeah, that's it. We can choose between showing the placeholder or showing the actual data, by the way. So this is in the settings of bricks. But anyway, let's get rid of that since I already have the other one. Let me put some spacing there again, like the other times. So 25, 25. All right. Now, beneath that, I want to have the picture of the artist. So let's add another element. I'm going to add a regular image. We don't have any image in the single element here, so let's go with that. I'm going to click on select dynamic data. So let's click on that little button and go get the post or featured image. There we go. Now I'm going to change the size for medium because not all the artists have the same size. So if I select, for example, full, it's going to be a little bit tricky because some have really big images. So let's keep medium. The HTML tag is going to be all right. So nothing, I will not change anything else except the link to. No, that's true. We are inside already the artist, so don't need to click on the image to go to a bigger image, unless you want, of course, to have a bigger picture of the artist. What you could do is link to the, I think it's the media file, so that way you could see the picture bigger. So after that, I'm going to add the content itself. So I already have the post content here, so don't need to add a regular text. Let's just drag and drop it below. And again, maybe add some spacing above and below. Of course, I could do that like this. Let's link them and let's say 50 above and below. Didn't do that when I had just the title because of the border of the container was interfering, so it's hard to select the right thing. But once you have a couple of elements, you can drag like that. It's going to be faster. All right, so this is the simple version. Let's refresh this. And as you can see now, everything is working as expected. And I can see any other artist as well, and they will all look the same. Now, let's push that one step further. I want to be able to show all the album on the artist page. I want to show all the album that this artist has done. And this is where I cannot use the post. Well, let me show you if I use the post element here, what will happen. And this is one of the limitation here of, if I can say it like that, of bricks. It's a limitation, but it's in certain ways by purpose. We have everything here. We have the artists, we have the albums, and so on. But of course, if I click albums here, what will happen is it shows every album. If I limit that to 3 or 4, I will say that, okay, it works because Shania Twins are the first one. But simply because everything, when you had a post by default, unless you reorder it, it's always going to be, and not just in bricks, by the way, it's always going to be from the last to first because it's assumed by default it's post. So usually you want to have the last post that you have just created to be the first one. So that's why it's always that order. So it takes the order of creation. nothing else. And since I put them on the order they were created, when I enter them one after the other, that means that the last album is the last one that I entered. So that's the first one. Hope it makes sense. So I could change a query and so on, but there's no way to filter to only have Shania Twain's album. And that's the problem. If you've seen something, just tell me in the comments. But I didn't find any way to filter it in any way. I do have a filter here by taxonomy, but I don't want to filter taxonomy here. I want to filter by the parent. Well, I want to. Parent is not necessarily the same thing. Parent sometimes mean the parent post because a post can have a child or children, and it's not what I mean here. I mean the parent post relation. So here we can filter by taxonomy, but that's not what I mean in my case. So I cannot go and just get the album from this current artist because, like I said at the beginning, quickly, everything is separated. I could have created just one custom post type where I would have put the artist, the name of the album, and all the songs in one element. But that means after that, that when I create the second album, I repeat again the artist name. And if I want to point to that, to everything that I have right now, because I have BO and things like that, I would have to repeat that each and every time, which makes no sense. Same thing for songs. So to keep everything separated is the best way, but then there's no way to link them together except relations. But to wrap, we don't have relations here. And of course, if I say any, it puts everything, not just albums. So this is not the way I'm going to build it this time. I'm going to get rid of that. This time, I'm going to come and use the query builder. Now, in order to be able to create columns and so on, I'm going to need a couple of elements. I'm going to use blocks since that's the default one of bricks. So let's insert, I'm going to click on the first level container to be able to insert a new block. It's going to be the last element. And that block will only be there to create columns. So I could right away switch that to column if I wanted to. But that's my main block here. This is not the one that will have the query loop because it will kind of remove that setting if I do it like that. So inside of this one, I'm going to create another block. Some people might want to use a div, but these are not the same size. So I want to have a little bit more control because a div by default is not flex. So not the same control. So I'm going to use that block, and this is where I'm going to put the query loop. And this block is kind of a, I don't know if I can say placeholder. That's why maybe you could use a div because it's going when we apply, let's say it like that. When we apply query loop on something, it kind of doesn't take it into account for the layout. Let's put it simply like that. So I'm going to need another block, another element inside of it after that. So let's come and use the query loop. So I'm going to toggle that on and I'm going to click on the query builder. Let's say it like that. And now when I click on the type, you see that I have two things that I didn't have previously. The relationship. So GE relation for JetEngine relation. And now we have the artist album and the album songs. If I click on the first one, you see that all the other settings are gone. So it's a little bit limited what I can do here. Let's say I'm going to put by default text here if there's no results. So this artist hasn't created any album yet. Let's say it like that. All right. But we don't have any settings for the order or for filtering or things like that. So that's one of the limitations as opposed to what we had when we were using the full spectrum of tools that comes with JetEngine in Gutenberg, for example. All right, so let's come and put our things inside of it. So This is the block. Then we need to enter inside of it the elements that we're going to use. So first thing that I want could be the image, could be the title, depending on the order that you want to put it. So let's go with, I think it's always the image first so far. Am I right? Yeah, image then title. So let's do the opposite just to change that. So let's put the title and then the image. So post title should work here. So Shania Twain, but then you see that it's replaced. By the way, you see that now they are on 4 columns simply because I put them in columns here, and it will always put everything. Now I have 4 columns simply because I have 4 albums by this artist. If I had 2, it would take 2 columns. If I had 10, it will try to put 10 columns. So that's why if you don't want to put 10 columns, of course, you're going to have to come here to the flex wrap and say wrap. That way, it will put the spacing, it will wrap on the other row if there's not enough spacing. Let's say it like that. By default, the block takes the entire width, so that's why as soon as I enable wrap, as you can see, instead of taking the width that it can, it takes the entire width because I haven't set any spacing for the block inside of it. So let's come here for this block. And if I want to have 3 columns, it's going to be mostly around 33% if you divide 100% by 3. So let's go in my style tab here in my layout, and I'm going to set the width here to be 33%. So this way, it's going to take 3 columns, and you see for the fourth one, it's going to go under. Now they're pretty close, so what I'm going to do here inside this main block, I'm going to put some spacing here for the row and the column gap. So again, as you can see, everything is close here. So let's put 30 as we did previously for the column and for the row. In other words, one as opposed to the other. And because of that, you see that now I have 2 columns instead of 3, because of course 33% doesn't take into account that spacing. So it's a little bit too much. So I'm going to reduce that a little bit, let's say probably 31. You see that we have 3 columns now. And of course, we can change that when we are mobile. Let's say I'm going to go directly with 2. So 50 is going to be a little bit too much. Probably going to be something like 48%. And again, going to keep the same thing for that size. 48%. It's going to be a little bit too much. So let's say 47. You can go down to 46, 45 to be sure if you want to. And of course, on mobiles, it's going to take the full width, so 100%. So 1 by line. All right, so let me go back here. And now inside that block, I'm going to add a little bit more value, a little bit more items. So let's add now the image. So add an element, drag and drop my image here. I'm going to select that and select the dynamic image here. Dynamic little, every time you see a little kind of thunder here, icon like that, that means that it's a dynamic. So featured image. Again, I'm going to use 300 by 300. And that can link to the actual post. So link to other URL. The next menu is going to be dynamic data. And then finally, click on that icon to go get the post link. You can set other attributes. I won't take the time to do so. And I'm going to come and add, after that, the excerpt. So I could use the pre-made one. So let's drag that into that block again. And by default, the excerpt is going to be 15. And you can change the more text if you want to, the little 3 dots that we have there. So that's okay for me. Let me maybe Don't know if I should put a little bit more spacing here. Let me use that image here, put spaces above and below. So 25 is going to be a little bit too much. Let's say 10, like that. And of course, I could use again the read more link like I showed you previously, but probably would be better to remove it then from the title. Well, right now the title doesn't have any link, by the way. So let's add that. Since I used the post title, I don't have any link on the title. I have one just on the image. Like I said, I could add a read more link, but let's not do that and go with the link to post here. I'm going to click that, and then my title becomes a link as well. So let's save that. I think that I have done everything. Just test this. And now I have my 4 albums here. And of course, if I click on them, I'm going directly to the album that is not styled yet. Album. And let's see if it works with other artists. So Beatles have 2 albums as well. Here we go. Now there's one little problem that we need to take into account. Is the case where we have an artist that has many albums, because right now it will show all the albums. And if that's okay for you, no problem with that. It will be 3 columns or more than that if you are on a smaller device. But if you have 50 albums, it will show all 50 one under the other. If you don't want that, again, this is one of the limitations of Bricks for now. You cannot set the number of elements because that query here doesn't provide any parameters or options. So let's try one other thing. And I'm going to try that just for the artist here, just for fun. Like I said, this one could be way enough for you. That could be the only thing that you need. But let's try to add instead, and I think we did that in the other tutorial as well, add a slider. So let me click on that block right now. And I'm going to use a little class that comes with the icon, I think. So that's where it comes. In my CSS here, let's add the class SR only. This is not the goal, by the way. Don't use that for any thing that you want to hide. Uh, SR means screen reader only. So the screen reader will read that for accessibility. Screen reader will still read that content, so that's not good. It's just for this particular case here because I want to quickly hide that without deleting it. But of course, in real case, you will use one or the other, that block or the slider, not both of them. All right, so after my post carousel, let's add instead the new slider that we have. I think it started with 1.5, the accordion nested slider. And let's add that here. Sorry, that's not the accordion that I want. Thinking the too many things at the same time. Not the accordion nested, we want the slider nested. So where's my, in the media, I think, yeah, slider here. Slider nested is the new version. All right. Now, by default, we have 3 slides, but we don't need that because now we're going to use dynamic data. So we will need to have the number of slides required to show all our dynamic data. So we don't know how many. So let's get rid of the other 2. And unfortunately, always go back to the slide after that, but we'll need to go back here to the slider. So let's keep just 1 slide for now. And the options, I'm going to set that to be, well, I can do that right away. I want to show 3 items. So I'm going to have the same thing, like kind of 3 columns. So that way I don't show just 1 album at a time, but I can show up to 3. And again, I'm going to do the same thing, by the way, here to mobile. So tablet device, I'm going to show 2 instead of 3. This one is going to inherit from it. And the mobile one, we're going to show only 1 at a time. All right. Now let's go back there. Attempt to scroll, I'm going to leave that to 1, but of course you can set that to 3 and then 2 and then 1 if you want to change all of that at the same time. But in my case, since I only have 4 albums, the one that has the most album is 4. So I'm going to leave it like that. We can set that, by the way, to autoplay so that it changes automatically. And since it's 3 seconds, can be a little bit quick, you can set that to pause on over. So when you mouse over that, it stops scrolling. Slides itself, we can add some padding if you want to. That could be a good idea. Let me add, let's say 10 pixels of padding here. I want to have my arrows. I don't want to have the dots. It's a choice here. We can use dots instead. So I'm going to remove this, called that pagination, but that's the little bullets that you have that there. And I'm going to add arrows instead. Now there's a little, I would say bug, but in 1.5, there's no arrow by default. You need to set them yourself. In 151, they have changed that, and you now have a default arrow if you select to show the arrow. But now you might wonder, it doesn't work or what? Yes, it does work, but you need to specify the arrow here, the little icons. So let me choose one here. Let's say, I'm going to use the font Awesome. If you already use other icons, sometimes you have the same icons in different places. So it's always a good idea to try to use just one library of icons. So that makes less loading, less weight. We call that chevron. I'm going to use those little arrows here. So let's use that one for the previous one. And for the next one, let's use, again, from Awesome Solid in my case, chevron, right. Good. As you can see, it's going to be on the top of the slide. So if it's okay for you, then that's okay. If you wanted them to be outside, then beware because of the size of the screen. So you can miss the arrows if you put them outside. But just for the big screen, I'm going to do it just to show you how to do that. So let's say something like -50 is enough to put them outside. I'm going to do the same thing from the right, -50. We'll put it outside. But of course, on mobile devices, I'm going to lose them. So I'm going to make sure now that they are back to 0. They're going to be inside, but that's okay. All right, now the actual content itself. Let's go back to my slide 1. I'm going to extend it. You see that by default, we have a heading and a button. I'm going to get rid of that later on. But first, you see that on my slide, I can use a query loop, and that's the reason why I didn't keep more than one slide. So I can use a query loop just like we did on our block, and I'm going to use the same query loop. So here, the relation artist album. I could use the same message here if there's no album. So this artist doesn't have any album yet. Just the default text in case. Now the alignment, let's start by putting some things first. Well, maybe I could put some column gap here, not row gap because of course we will have just one row with a slider. And let's change the content. So I could use, for example, let's try to see if I could use the image as a background. And that will not work, probably. You'll see why. Let me use the image here. So yeah, it does work. Of course, it's a little bit cut, but it seems to work. I don't know why it doesn't render the view, but maybe in 151 it will. So I was afraid that it will put that in the entire slider, but that would be on the slider here. So that's true. So if I put it on each slide, we have 3 slides, but these are 3 distinct slides, so it does work. Now my heading here, the problem is the text, by the way. So I should put some overlay or something like that if I do it this way. And I'm not sure. Let's first of all put that to 300, by the way. I'm not sure I would be able to put an overlay. Do we have that? Background size, repeat position. I don't have that right there, but I do have overlay here. So if I apply that to background, let's say I'm going to put the dark gray one and a bit of transparency to see that through. So I don't unfortunately have the real preview, but anyway, let's put maybe 50%. We'll preview it later to know if it works fine or not. But anyway, let's keep it like that for now. My editing, I'm gonna keep the editing, but I'm gonna change that. I could of course use the post title as well. Maybe that's what I'm gonna do. Post title, Shania Twain, of course, now replaced. So I'm gonna get rid of that. I'm just gonna change my post title to be something else. So let's say we had just one H1. I should put an H2 here, by the way, which I didn't, but let's do that. I'm going to put a fixed one, so let's put one here that will say something like artist albums. That will be an H2. So these title here will be H3. That's perfectly fine. All right. Artist. I didn't know how to type that. Artist albums. And of course, I could put some spacing. Don't know if I should take the time to do that, but let's say just on the bottom because we already have on the top. Here we go. Okay, so now I have my editing here. I'm going to change, of course, the color for that because we cannot really see it now. So let's put it light gray or completely white, maybe better. And we'll see the end result later on because I don't have any image right now. I don't know if it's enough. But that's okay. The only thing that I want now is to know if it works. And looks like my title isn't working. Did I remove the wrong one? Let me put back the post title here. Post title. Yeah, okay. I think I deleted the wrong one. My mistake. Of course, I'm going to change that back to H3. And I will need to put the color back white. Okay, let's get rid of the button. And again, we could have extract if we want to, for example. So I always say extract, it's excerpt, sorry. English is not my main language, by the way. So same thing here, maybe it's not a good idea, but anyway, just to show you that we can, let's put that white. Let's put my slide here. Maybe I could put something like this. So we have a little bit spacing. Is that too much? Like that, maybe. Okay, let's see how it looks. Let's save that and see how we are so far. So let's refresh that page. And well, yeah, probably the overlay is either not applied at all or not enough. But anyway, you see that my slider is working. Should move by itself, by the way. Don't know if it does. Yes, it does. Okay. So maybe if I could just quickly change my overlay, but not sure it's working as expected. Let me try to jump that to 75, let's say. But I assume that the image does replace the overlay as well, so that could be a bug here. Yeah, we should have the overlay on the top of the image, which is not the case. Of course, what you can do instead is simply not put any overlay and put the image in the slide itself. But I don't want to spend any more time on that. You understand the principle. So now we have the artist uh, the artist template done. Let's create the album template. When we click on specific album, let's say Abbey Road here, let's change it. So same thing, click on my template here. Let's click on that create new, and let's call that single album. It's going to be a single, create template, click on edit. This time I want to make sure I don't forget it, so I'm going to apply my template right away. So condition, click on add condition. It's going to be post type. Let's say artist. We are with the album right now. Okay. So it's going to be for an album. And again, we're going to populate the content just for testing. So let's use the same one that I'm using right now, which is single post page and Abbey Road. Apply and review. And great, now we can start building. Let's add a new layout section. Let's add the post title, which is the name of the album. Now we have a little bit more information though here. So let me just again put some spacing, 25, 25. In the album, first of all, we want to know which artist or group has made the album. So I'm going to add, we can add, for example, just a basic text, unless we want to format it with italic like we did in the previous one. But anyway, and that text here will be dynamic. So let's click on that little dynamic data. Well, first of all, I'm going to get rid of all of that. And I'm going to say by and enter space. And then I'm going to add a dynamic data, which is the post title. So it's going to say, if I do that, by Abbey Road. Of course, this is not what I want. So again, I need to use the relationship. So it will be the post title, but the post title of the artist, not of the album. So let's see if I click on that and I go into a section here. We have the archive, the terms, we have the date, user profile, so on. JetEngine, but you see we have the song order, the song length, and the release date, but we don't have, unfortunately, the artist. I could output maybe a PHP function, but that's going to be a little bit more complicated. So what can I do? Well, I can use, again, a query loop. But I'm going to use a query loop just for that element here. All right, so I want that one to have a dynamic data. So let's create a block. So let's wrap that into a block. Could be a div as well, by the way. Yeah, let's maybe change that to a div because we don't want the entire width anyway. So convert that to a div. I could have, of course, said insert div instead. In this text here, now I want to have the post name. So let's do that, post title, sorry. And by the way, I'm going to add the column link to that so that I can link back to my artist. Great. Do we have the A tag here? Well, you could use custom and then the A tag, but we do have the link here. So let's do that instead. Dynamic data and post link. There we go. So this way, I don't need to put a link here, but I'm not 100% sure it's going to do the same thing. Let's see. Let's see what we have so far. By Abbey Road, whoops, forgot to change my thing. So we do have a link here, but by is also a link. That's the difference. By is part of the link. That's okay. Really depends. If you don't want by to be part of the link, just remove the link here. And like I did previously, add column link there. And only the title, the artist name will be the link. Now the problem is I want not have color. So if you want to have the color, as you see here, I didn't set the color, by the way. That's probably why I didn't set the color of the links. So let's start doing that first. So if I had a link here, the typography, let's say, I don't know, want that to be green. Will that work? Yeah, okay. Here we go. That's why it wasn't showing differently. So now it's clear that it's a link. So that's what I need. Now I forgot, of course, to come and add a query loop. So that's why I added a div here. So let's add a query loop to that one. And we're going to use our relationship that we had previously, artist album. No result. Well, I'm going to leave it empty. Save. And now you see that by the Beatles. So if I click on that, I'm taken, should be taken, here we go, to the Beatles page. All right, so let's continue. I did separate the basic text because I knew that I had to do that. Now the rest of the information are really for the album, so I don't need to put that into my div. I can leave it outside of my div. So let's add after that, instead of adding three, because I have three different elements, the artist, the release date, and the genre. So instead of having three different basic text, for the next one, let's add one rich text instead. And now I'll be able to add more information. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to say release date. And of course, being a rich text format, I can even set that to be in bold. And after that, I'm going to click on my little dynamic data button here, and I'm going to go, and you see we have a list of everything that we can put there. The release date is inside the album itself. We have here JetEngine album, release date, and here we go. You see the code that it puts there. Let me do a shift enter to change line without changing paragraph. And I'm going to put genre, same thing, column, space, and I'm going to highlight that to be in bold. Of course, my by will not be in bold. That's okay. And I'm going to add this time the taxonomy. So taxonomy is terms. So I'm going to go get the term and the term called genre. So again, if I save that, and I refresh my page here, you see that I have now have the date and I have the genre. If you want to format the date differently, by the way, oops, looks like I don't have the right date here. It's today's date. Let's see, release date. So there was a little problem that I just saw that I have also on my example website. And the problem is that, as you can see here now, my date is the right one. So it seems that Bricks doesn't handle dates the same way as what we had previously, which was Gutenberg. So, well, Gutenberg or the default JetEngine or Jet theme core that we were using the first time. So what I did, I went back to my post settings here, my album settings, and I changed that little setting here. It was off, and I turned it on. Save as timestamp. We didn't need to do that. In fact, I guess it wouldn't have worked if we had set it like that the first time for the Gutenberg tutorial, but looks like bricks treat the date differently. So if we want to have the date the right way, we need to turn that on. Now, I did come and set that on my Abbey Road album to make sure that it works, and sure enough, it does work. Now, let me go and see the other albums, and that's what I thought. It's not working. So that means that I would need to go and resave all my albums. So let's say come on over here. And my date is the right one. So let's try to just update it and refresh. And here we go. So I would have to go through all of my different albums. Fortunately, I have only 8. but go and save them. Just open them and save them again in order to change that for the timestamp instead of the other date type. Of course, when you do that, usually you will set that at first. Now you know that if you work with bricks, don't forget to turn timestamps, sorry, if you are using dates for bricks in JetEngine. All right. So that being said, let's go on and with the current example that we had. So let me go back with my Abbey Road. So the problem that I had with the date is simply that. All right. So now I have my date, my release date, my genre. Genre, by the way, is pointing back to the genre rock. If you want to see all the albums that are of this genre, if you don't want to have a link back to this, you can probably filter that. Let me just go and get that thing for you. So just watch, and since it's a default, the default is to have a link. There's no filter to remove the link. You cannot say link false or things like that. So it looks like if you go into the Academy, which is the documentation, seems that the only way to remove the link is using a filter like that. So you need to add a filter into the code, and that way you can remove the link. So I won't do that. Don't want to take the time to do that, especially don't want to go into the code. I would need to have probably a snippet code, things like that. Don't want to do that, but this is where you can find it. So let me go back here. I'm going to leave the link for myself. That's okay. The next thing I want to add is the content of that album because we have kind of a, I don't know if I can say biography of the album. So let's add the post content. Here we go. Maybe put some spacing above and below that thing. So we'll space it out. And after that, let's put 50 maybe below because after that, now I want to have the songs of this album. So let me add a title here, like I did for the artist. Songs of the album. It's going to be an H2. And again, let's add some spacing below that. Okay. Now, let's add another listing. So what I want, of course, if I haven't saved it. So this is what we have so far. Now, I haven't created any listing, if I can call it that way. So again, we need to have another element that allows us to create a query loop. So this time I'm going to use a block. Could be a block, could be a div, really up to you. So I need to select that one in order to be able to insert a block. I'm going to again use a query. They're going to be one under the other anyway, unless you want to have two columns, for example, like we did in the other tutorial. But anyway, so now I need to have the relationship album and songs. So let's select that one. Won't take the time to put any no result text, but you could do so if you want to, of course. And inside of that, now I'm going to put the information that I need. So I'm going to use, instead of putting three elements and having to change that with CSS like we did for the Gutenberg one, unfortunately, we have the rich text format here, or element that allows us to be a lot more specific and to put everything that we need. So let's use, first of all, the song number. So let's, in order to do that, let's use the JetEngine song order that we have here. Okay. Is it all right? Okay, that's frozen a little bit. Sorry. Now we can set, for example, a little dash like that. I'm going to put the title. So the title will be, the post title will be, in fact, the title of the song because of the query builder. And then simply, maybe in parentheses, put the link. So again, song length and close my parenthesis. So let's save that. And you see that it works perfectly fine. The only problem is then again, it sees that as a post. So it always goes from the most recent one to the first one. So since I put them in the order of the album, they are on reverse order. Then again, when we have relationship, this is the limitation that we have for now with bricks. And I say for now, by the way, because it's written in the JetEngine site and things that they are working with bricks. So personally, I think that we can expect that a little bit like Elementor, we will probably at some point have a full integration. That means that just like Gutenberg, just like Elementor, we will probably have at some point buttons here to be able to use dynamic data, dynamic link, dynamic image, and so on that we have with JetEngine. So, of course, I'm not saying that it will because I don't have any information on that, but don't be surprised if you ever see that in the coming weeks or months inside Bricks Builder. That would be really great. And that way we could use query builders to reorder things like we did with Gutenberg. So that's it for this part here. Now, of course, we could mix if we want to change that, if we want to reorder, because you know that a regular query allows us to reorder, but we cannot with bricks. But what we could do, of course, as we did with Gutenberg, is simply use Gutenberg to create a page. So we can use bricks for the overall pages, and we could use Gutenberg for some templates, for example. So let's, this is a little a bonus here, but let's see how we could do that to replace, and that would replace something like this one here. Of course, it will be one or the other. And by the way, part of the limitations that we have, we can't use a query builder, of course, like we mentioned. We cannot use Jet Smart Filters as well. If I go back, let me save that and get out of bricks. In the other tutorial, we have used JetSmart Filter to add filters to our page. Now, we cannot do that with bricks by default. Let me really say that by default, because as you will see here, we could still use bricks for the overall page, but use Gutenberg. And in Gutenberg, of course, we can add those filters. That will, of course, work perfectly well. Still, I'm in bricks. Of course, that means that we don't use bricks to edit that particular page or that particular template in this particular case. So I would need to remove the other template and replace it by a Gutenberg or Jet Theme Core template. So that means that you need to have installed the Jet Theme Core, and you will see it here, Theme Builder and Theme Template. And that way you can use the same thing. So you have all the details and the other tutorial, but let's do it next. Okay, so if you don't want to have to uh, watch my entire other video, let's see how we can do that with Gutenberg, but just for the sake of using a filter in this particular case. So first of all, since we have already created templates for everything, and if I want to do like in the other example, I'm going to create a filter for the albums here. But of course, I already have created a template for that. So in order to not have a conflict, I'm going to first of all disable my created template that I created in Bricks. So let me go into my album archive. I'm gonna edit that with bricks. And I'm gonna go inside my conditions here. So template settings, conditions, and I'm gonna simply get rid of that so that it's no longer applied without having to delete it. All right, so now let's go to, well, I should have changed that. to go directly to the dashboard. That's what I usually do. Let me change that settings here. A little bit tired of having to always go to the preview. So let's go to the dashboard. There we go. All right. So first of all, you need to have Jet Theme Core installed. So that's another plugin from Crocoblock. If you have the entire Crocoblock suite, that's for sure you have it. Same thing for Smart Filter, by the way, which is another plugin by Crocoblock. JetFormBuilder as well, but this one is free. And of course, JetEngine, that's the one we're talking about since the beginning. So if you have the entire suite, you have those and many others. If not, then of course this part does not apply to you. All right, so in Crocoblock, I'm going to create a theme builder here. So I'm going to create a new page template. I need to add a condition. So again, I'm going to go a little bit fast here. So if you want to have more detail, go with the other video. So I'm going to select here archive. All archive, I'm going to select the CPT archive, not the album one, but CPT archive. And then on the post type, I'm going to select album. I'm going to click create. I'm going to rename it. The default name is pretty strange. So albums archive. Then I can add a specific header and a specific footer. That's not what I want. I just want the content. So I'm going to click on add buddy. And now I can add a template, the theme templates that are here, by the way, from the library or create a new one since I don't have any. So I'm going to click on create template. I'm using the block editor. We don't have any other choice for now. You can do that with block editor or Elementor, of course, if you have an Elementor installed. And hopefully at some point, Bricks will be there as well. So the template name, I'm going to give the same name, albums archive. Click create, and I'm going to edit it right away. So let's do that pretty quickly. The problem with the Jet Theme Core is that it seems that it will always take the full width of the page, which is strange sometimes, too big on a screen like that. So what I'm going to do in order for me to easily add CSS to prevent that behavior, I'm going to use a column here and put everything inside of that. So let's add a column. Yeah, column here. So let's add a 100% one, but everything will be inside of that. So let's add the titles. So heading. I'm going to add all albums, let's say, or albums, but anyway, just to be different than the other one. It's going to be an H1. After that, I'm going to add, this is where I'm going to add my filters. So I'm going to, again, insert here columns. But this time, I'm going to insert 3 columns. So I'm going to use that one here. And let me just show you the filters that we already have, by the way. I skipped that step. So I have the artist one, which will be a drop down with all the artists in them. Again, if you want to know how to create that, it's in the other video. And the albums by year is a range. In other words, a slider where you select between this and this. So in the first one, let's select the select. So select is a drop down. You see that all the Jet Smart Filter icons are in color, so you know that it's the right one, not one from form element, for example. So here, I'm going to select, do I have that? Okay, let me go back here. There we go. So I'm going to select the artist, which is a filter I have already created, and we're going to apply that to a listing grid, even if it's not created yet. Ajax means that it won't refresh the entire page. You have the choice between Ajax page reload, which means it will reload the entire page each time we make a selection or click the submit button. And from what I understand, mix means both of them, of course, because I guess that if you use Ajax and JavaScript is not enabled, probably it will not work. When you use mix, My understanding is that it will use Ajax if it's available, and if not, then it will reload the page. So that way we're sure that everything will work. We can apply on value change. That means with Ajax, it will reload the page right away. But since we want to have two filters, we're going to add an apply button. So we're going to click on the apply button. And then you can show apply button, but it's one for each filter. That's not what we want when we have more than one filter. So this is really in the case where you have just one. So we don't want to show the button, but we do want to show the label. It's going to help to know what we select here. So that's the only thing that we need here. I'm going to select the column where this is hosted to put it centered because we're going to have more than one later on. We want everything to be aligned. And while I'm there, by the way, I'm going to change my width here to be 40%. Second column, I'm going to add my range filter. So again, it's going to be albums by year, the one that I created already. Always my listing grid, we can say mixed, apply button, and show filter label, just like previously. Forget about the numbers that are there. They are dynamic, so of course it will depend on what we have in the album years. So let me just again select the column and align it to the middle. And this one will also be 40%. So the last one will only be 20%. In it, I'm going to add my apply button. Of course, that will apply. So my listing grid again. I'm going to do that in Ajax. There's no mix this time. And that's about it. Of course, I could put my column again centered and 20%. All right, so this is my filter. Now, of course, we don't have any data to filter, so I'm going to add after that what we call a listing grid. So again, I have all the details in the other video if you want to check that. But basically, we create one item, just like we did with the post archive in Bricks. We create one item, we specify what we want in it, and then we create a listing grid where we duplicate that one element for the number of items that we have. So let me make sure that I'm in the right place. I'm going to open that. So after that column here, that row, I should say, insert after, and I'm going to insert here a listing grid. Come on, why don't you show? Here we go, listing grid. Strange. Anyway. All right, so my listing grid is already created. I have 3 columns, but anyway, those listings are going to be replaced because now, as previously within Bricks, it will always show them the last item to the first item. But with the custom query that we have here, we can use a custom query, and I'm going to select all album, and that specific query here will reorder everything. Sorry, reorder everything from by name, of course, from first to last, and it will also filter. Sometimes we can filter if we want to have just the albums from the artist. I have added another query for that as well, so a little bit easier to use that way. So that's about it in this case. Of course, don't necessarily check the data that is here. It's going to change based on the filters, but now we show all the albums. One last thing that I'm going to add is the pagination. So we already have set that to be 6 per page from memory in the query builder. So I'm going to add after that my pagination. That comes with Smart Filter as well, by the way. So listing grid, can use mix maybe. And I'm going to use my jet theme style to center it. So I need to have the style plugin installed to do that. Going Gonna change maybe those names, previous text. Gonna change that to previous, next text to next. And here we go. Let's update that. And now if I refresh my albums page, I have all albums, I have my filters, I have my listing, I have my 2 pages. And if I filter something, let's say Shania Twain as the one that has the most things. So, whoops, looks like here I made a little mistake. Oh, I know why. That's because I change. Okay. Okay, I know what's going on here. So anyway, I'm going to apply filter. What is going on here? Remember when we switched from, I went on and toggled the switch for timestamp. Now it's using timestamp instead of the default JetEngine that all the others and JetEngine itself understand. So it's going to be either one or the other. As you can see, it's going to create a problem if we have both. So in bricks, if you want to use only bricks, then don't use, well, do use timestamp with date. If not, then don't use it because you're going to see something like that. By the way, what is a timestamp? That's the number of seconds from a specific date, and I think it's still the 1st January 1970 to today. So that's why you have a range strange like that. So anyway, I could probably change that, but as you can see, it does work, but a little bit strange here. So that filter will not work as expected, unfortunately. Uh, Here it does work because I didn't change the timestamp for bricks. So as you can see, this is how it should work. So the first album is in 19, if I show all the albums, first album is Sgt. Pepper. So that's the oldest one in 1967. Latest one is Shania Twain now. So that's why we have 2017. So so that's why, and then of course we have changed that by a range of 10 years. So that's why it works like that. So anyway, that's the timestamp that we have here. That's what creates my little error here. Now, if I compare to the video for Gutenberg, there's a couple of other things. Again, we have some limitations, like I said, in bricks for now, as of today. Form Builder. In the other video, I've used JetFormBuilder to create a front end page to be able to submit data to our database. In this case, add a new artist. So I already have that form created. And since in Bricks we do support shortcodes and JetForms do support shortcodes as well, we can reuse that same form here just by using the shortcode provided here. And that's the problem why we can't use JetSmart Filter. There's no shortcode. So if I create a new page here, let's say add an artist. I'm going to publish that. And yes, of course, I could use directly here Gutenberg, but just to show you that we can use it in bricks if you want to have other stuff around, I'm going to do that in bricks. So exit in bricks. I'm going to add my element here and simply add a short code. So, whoops, sorry, this is not what I wanted to do. Short code. And simply inside of it, I'm going to paste the short code provided by Jet Form Builder. And that form will now allow me, if I have here, let's say, I don't have links here yet, so add an artist. Is that the name? Yeah. So let's say, for example, I'm going to enter my wife's name. I could choose a picture, so I don't have any picture of her clothes. So let's use a picture that is already there. That's strange. Okay, but anyway, and some text you see here. So test for adding an artist, let's say. And I'm going to click submit. And as you can see, it has worked. The artist, by the way, right now is not visible. So if you go to the artist, you will not see it because I have set my form to put it inside a draft mode or pending review, review wall, pending review. Um, so if I go to my artist here, you see that my wife's name is now pending. So if I simply publish it, if I'm the administrator that publishes it, update, and now my artist here is my wife. And of course, we can click on it, see all the details. If I have put more details, she doesn't have any album yet, of course. So everything is working as expected. So JetFormBuilder does work when using shortcodes. So I think we did everything that we wanted to do. So I hope this video was helpful to you. If you have any comments, just put them below, questions as well. And if you like the video, of course, click the thumbs up to encourage us, to show us the direction to go. And of course, you can always subscribe to my channel for more videos like that. So thank you and have a good day.